Coming out of Eastern Oregon, damn near Idaho. You're listening to the Double Talking with Dog Bite Hair Show. All righty, folks. With me on the Zoom here, I got Aaron Howell from motherfucking Ruckus.
Hi.
Hey, buddy. How's it going?
It's good, man. It's good to see your face.
Good to see your face. I haven't seen you since you played in Seattle a few years back pre-COVID.
Well, I mean, I've seen you on the socials, but yeah, that was the last time we saw each other in person for sure.
Yeah, man. So motherfucking Ruckus, you guys are based out of Colorado, right?
Yeah, Denver.
Did you
Well,
guys?
I should amend that. Three of us are based, three or four of us, depending on who's playing at the time. Because we've got a guy who's sort of our old guitar player Tay is sort of half in, half out at the moment, just because he's got a lot of projects. So he is not fully committed, I would say, which is totally understandable. He's been upfront about that. So that's why I say three or four of us. Three, three or four of us are based out of Denver, and then Tony is based out of Chicago. But the band is primarily based out of Denver, yes.
So Tony's in another band. What's the name of that band?
The Blind Staggers is
They're
the name of
great.
Tony's other band.
They're
Oh
great.
yeah, they're awesome.
I should get them on
Um,
too.
yeah, they'd be a great fit for all the stuff that you do.
Yeah, I played them
Tony,
times.
do you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's Tony, Tony's wife, Laura, Tony's wife's brother, Shrek, and then Tony's brother, Damien, and then their drummer, Braden, is aka Tiny. He is not a relative, but he's a brother from another mother. So it's a total family band. Their songwriting's just incredible. Obviously, their playing is just incredible. And we're very different stylistically, but we've done tons of shows together, and we love playing together. Always had a great time doing it.
You guys got a history in Seattle too, don't you? Because you guys know Misha and shit, right?
Yeah, so we've been going to Seattle for a long time. Primarily, we always used to play Everett and Bremerton, was generally where we were at more than Seattle proper. Um, we really, I mean, we've played Seattle proper a handful of times over the years, but for the most part, we've always had better luck in the smaller surrounding areas. It's just, I'm sure you get it in bigger markets. It can be tough to get people out,
Yeah,
you know.
Tacoma's my jam right now, but Everett's actually and then yeah, Bremerton's actually picking up again, man. It was a hot spot when I first started playing, and then it kind of died down, but they got some good shit going on there again, which makes me happy because I like Bremerton. It's a cool town.
Winterland was my favorite venue in the country
I
for a long
I only
time.
got to play it twice, man, and it was so cool. I'm so happy that I got to, but it's so legendary and so sad that it's fucking gone, man. Like a lot of
Yeah,
places.
we had so much fun playing there. We always when we used to really tour heavily, and obviously those days for us are kind of over because we're all old family men now. But when we were really touring aggressively, we would spend several days in the Seattle area. We would go do a Tacoma show. We would do a Bremerton show. We would do an Everett show. We would do a Seattle show. And then we would do kind of, every once in a while we do a wild card like Kirkland or something like that. And we never had, we've never had like shoulder to shoulder packed rooms, but we've always had a great time.
Yeah.
I would say probably the best luck we ever had in Seattle proper was we got to play with it was All Bets on Death, Zero Down, us, and Flex Bronco. We were on tour with Flex Bronco, and we came through Seattle and did a show with all those bands at the Comet. And that, out of all the shows we ever played in the Seattle area, that one really stood out to me. And then, of course, we've always had a really great time at Slim's. Slim's Last Chance has always been an awesome spot for us, and the sound's always been great. And you can't beat that outdoor stage and show area. It's just such a fun place. We love it out there. We love, love, love the Pacific Northwest just in general.
Yeah, man. Uh, Fucking all bets on death. There's a band that was great that's no longer around.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Zach's got another thing going called the Warts, though. That's pretty rad. You've probably heard them if you follow them.
I haven't heard the Warts. And I didn't know about that. I mostly keep up with Mikey Highlife. He's got Motogeist going on, and Mikey actually every so often he'll randomly send me a demo. Even when he was out in Alaska kind of finding himself or whatever, he would send me little acoustic demos that he wrote and stuff like that. We've had sort of a back and forth um, artistic sharing relationship. I love Mikey. We played with Motogeist at Tony V's garage. Last time we were out there was us and them and Black Magic Flower Power, and that was cool. But I did see Zach at Phil from Flex Bronco's wedding. I was just at Phil from Flex Bronco's wedding this last summer. He lives down in Joshua Tree, and I saw Zach and his wife Kelly there, and it was just awesome to hang with them.
Before I even got into music, I lived with Kelly for a little while in Seattle.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, she was my roommate before her and Zach even hooked up, before I was even dog bite for any of this shit happened. And yeah, she's from Stanfield, and a buddy of mine moved up to Seattle and was looking for a roommate, and we all had a mutual friend, and they were like, hey, he was like, hey, you guys are all looking for roommates. So anyways, and I moved up with them for a little while. She was always the most responsible one out of us. And
right.
But yeah, Kelly's fucking rad, man. So, and
oh yeah,
Zach's cool as shit too, man. I love them both. They're great.
It was great. We one of the Flex Bronco dudes, Andy, the drummer, Thor, he had these because in California they have the mushroom bars.
Oh yeah.
I think we might have them here. I've never seen them here, but I heard tell that we have them here. And I had just had kind of a bad experience with mushrooms, like just before that. Like
That's a sign you don't want to do them again.
Yeah, I've always been a big advocate of psychedelics, and I'm what we call Colorado sober.
Yeah.
I don't drink, I don't do hard drugs, but
way.
actually I by through no intentional effort, I just kind of stopped smoking pot on Memorial Day, just because it's not that I have anything against smoking pot. It's that I don't have the energy to drop in. The first smoke of the day always gets me really in my head, and it gets me really anxious and really uncomfortable. And then after that, I'm usually fine. But it's just that first one, I haven't had it in me to deal with it. I just haven't wanted to do it.
No idea how similar we are in that fact, man. Like, I smoked pounds of weed for years, and then all of a sudden it just started affecting me that same exact way, and I had to put it down. And since then, I've picked it up, put it down, picked it up, put it down, and I'm kind of in the put it down phase right now. In a couple of years I'll probably pick it back up again, because it's just how I go with it. But fuck, man, I'm the same way. It just gets me in my own fucking head after a minute. And ironically enough, it started after my first bad mushroom trip. Had a lot of great mushroom trips, and then for some reason I just had that first bad one. And then I tried it again not long after. I had another bad one. So, but that's been like 15 years ago. So now I'm thinking about dabbling again, trying to like maybe microdose.
Microdosing's where it's at. And this is kind of what I was getting at is, so on Halloween, I went to 3 Ween shows at the Mission Ballroom here in Denver. My favorite band. I always have a great time, and I always take a little bit. And I don't know if it's because I was hanging out with some of the young Wook kids from the chicken wing place where I work, and I was trying to be the cool guy or something, but I took more than I probably should have, and it gave me a stomach ache. And, when you're on mushrooms and you don't drink, and there's drunk people all around you, that kind of creates an uncomfortable situation. And I was kind of in my head going through some stuff, And I ended up just having a terrible night, really a terrible experience. And so I went out to Phil's wedding, and I kind of had that, I was still a little gun shy, and Thor pulls out these, mushroom bars, and I'm like, I don't know, I just kind of had this bad trip, and he's like, oh, it's just a micro dose, dude. Nothing will happen. You'll be fine. And it's cool because they're dosed out so that one of those little squares is just the perfect little microdose. It made all the jokes funnier. It made all the conversations more like, it brought up the level of connection and all the conversations, and made the lights a little brighter. And that's really it. So I think if I ever do it again, it's only going to be microdosing from now on. I think my days of a heroic dose have come to an end. But I will say that usually what happens is it's the same thing with smoking pot, is it's bad at the beginning. And then once I kind of break the threshold, it's awesome and everything's positive, and, all those neurological connections are happening. But what I've found is that I have better results when I use mushrooms, set and setting, that, like they say, is super important. But if I'm using it in what I would say a shamanic purpose, where it's like I did psilocybin truffles in Amsterdam after our first tour of Europe. And that was like, it just sort of integrated the whole process. I did it on another tour of Europe as well. And it was just like, it was really good for the process of like kind of taking in everything that we just went through and thinking about the future. And it really helped to amplify just the optimism and enthusiasm that I was feeling after the fact. But dropping in was not fun. It didn't feel good. It was scary. I was paranoid. You get in your head thinking everybody's mad at you and nobody likes you, like that whole thing. And that's kind of what happens with pot. And I just, I don't want to take away from the time with my son. I don't want to take away from, I don't want to diminish my capacity, especially when time has become so much more precious now at this stage in my life.
Yeah, I can get that, man. Yeah, and for me, I've always said if it's not working for me, I don't need it, and
Right.
that's when, and it's funny, it's the opposite with me. It's usually, it starts out okay and then it gets bad for both,
Oh,
like, and that's with me. It's like
it kind of ramps up.
exactly. Yeah, it's it's great for a minute, and then it's when it's not, and it's weird because people, man, oh fuck, you get those people that just love weed. They're like, no, you're just not smoking the right kind. I'm like, I've smoked every
Right.
fucking kind. Like there's something.
Oh, you just haven't done it enough. You're not smoking enough. You're smoking the wrong weed. It's just,
Yeah.
you just need to do it more and get used to it. It's like, nah, man, it's, my tolerance went up, but it's still, like these people doing dabs. Like,
Oh fuck.
I don't understand that.
No,
Every time
that's
I've done a dab, it's ruined my whole day.
yeah, that's like, for me, that's like, that turns it into like a drug too. Like it takes away the great part of weed for me. And that's that it's a
Right.
plant, it grows, you fucking harvest it, and then you smoke it after you cure
Right.
it, and that's what I love about weed. I love old school weed. I love the smell of weed, like I love the taste of weed. And when you cook it down, you turn it into a process. Like it takes all the everything that's great to me about weed away. And like you said, it's like,
Absolutely.
then it hits you like a fucking goddamn freight train. I've never even touched it. I mean, I used to take, like vape hits, like the old school vaporizers where you'd fucking fill up like a party balloon or something.
Yeah.
I mean, we used to do that back when that was like a whole fucking process, but like, or gravity bong hits, but I've never even fucking dabbed, man. I just know that's not for me.
I've done it. I've done it a few times, and I've almost always regretted it. I do like my pen, or I should say, I liked my pen when, before I kind of came to this
Mhm.
conclusion that I'm just not in that place right now.
Yeah.
But because I can regulate the dosage a little bit more. But yeah, man, it just, it's like smoking crack, dude. And I don't, there are some people who they just enjoy that narcotic effect of really strong concentrated THC. And for me, I experience, I've heard the term THC psychosis before. Now what I have found, and this is going to end up being a whole thing about just old guys on drugs.
I've never heard that term either. I work in mental health and I've never heard the term THC psychosis, but I'll tell you, the second you said that, I know exactly what you're talking about though.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
so I mean, it's like what I saw this, I saw this video. I can't remember what it was. It might have been on like Kurzgesagt or something like that, some science video on YouTube. And it was talking about how the weed has been bred so that the THC level is super high and the CBD level is super low. And so the CBD is kind of what regulates the THC. You know, it kind of balances you out.
yeah.
And if you are prone to, there's been studies apparently, and again, I can't quote, you know, chapter and verse as far as the source material goes, but if I remember correctly, if someone has a propensity for psychosis or schizophrenia or something like that, really high THC and really low CBD products can kind of tip you over. Not on a permanent basis, but certainly if you're doing it all the time, it can affect your mental health. You know, it can cause deleterious effects to your mental health. And I think that I already have kind of a tendency towards anxiety and depression and overanalyzing. And, you know, sometimes it's good to really take a hard critical look at yourself, but really high, if I have any cannabis product, it's got to be something that's like, I don't know if you've had like 1-to-1 THC CBD
Yeah,
products
that's
or
how
like,
when I do it, that's how I do it. I got some gummies right now that are like, actually, it's like 4-to-1
yeah,
CBD 4, THC 1 is how I usually actually like to do it, to be honest.
yeah,
Uh, I like more CBD than THC, but I do like a little THC because I feel like, I don't know, you got to have a little bit to ignite the CBD, I feel like, because it's like anytime I ever just take straight CBD, it feels like bullshit. But if I
right.
take some that's got a bit of THC in it, it usually does me okay.
Yeah, I'm finding, you know, I just turned 40 back in March, and I'm finding that I have less I wouldn't say I'm risk averse, but I'm less risk tolerant. You know, it's like you know, there's only so many hours in a day, and I got a job, and I've got multiple musical projects, and I've got a relationship, and I've got a 3-year-old kid, and I'm going back to school, and I'm trying to do all these things, and I just simply don't have the time for, like, I'm trying to get up earlier so
Mhm.
that I can have the time to do the things that I don't have the time to do.
I
You
know.
know, I'm trying to get up at 6 o'clock or earlier so that I can just practice my fucking guitar, because I don't even have time to practice my guitar. So to me, it's like I'm having enough trouble managing a social media addiction. I don't have to, I can't lump weed and other substances into that as well. You know what I mean? It's like I'm trying to cut things away. I'm trying to cut away things that are altering my state, that require my attention and require my energy, and are fragmenting that energy in some way. I'm
Mhm.
getting to the point where I can only have 2 cups of coffee max in the morning, and I'm not even finishing my second cup of coffee. I never thought I would get to the point where I'm losing interest in caffeine. You know what I mean? It's just, it seems like every day more and more is falling away, and I'm becoming more interested in learning, and I'm becoming more interested in meditation, and I'm becoming more interested in trying to cultivate my presence and
That's so weird. We're so in a similar spot in life, man. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
no,
like
that's fine. Please do.
it's seriously kind of eerie, like how I've been kind of on this spiritual journey for the past year myself. I lost my grandmother last year, and it like
I'm
put a lot
sorry
of
for your loss, man.
shit into perspective for me, though. Just like
Right.
reminded me, like you were saying, how fragile life is and how I've like kind of fucked around for the last forever, and it's just time to stop. And I've been with you on like just like I don't really, yeah, kind of meditate. I've been talking. I don't know if you know James Honeycutt or not, but
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
been
I know James.
getting into a lot of like Native American spiritual healing and shit like that. And it's a kind of meditation, but not quite fully into it. So I burn a lot of sage and fucking kind of like watch my nature surroundings and stuff like that. And but yeah,
That's meditation, I would say.
I try to battle my own, figure out my inside workings of my own head so I can fucking battle the things that fuck me up, kind of like you were saying, and I think that's why weed fucks me up too, is like I said, I get in my own head and I think of every bad case scenario, everything I've fucked up on, everybody I might have pissed off, and it just
Yep.
eats me until I fucking feel like I'm dying almost.
Oh
you
yeah,
know?
it sucks. It's horrible. Yeah, no, we're definitely in the same boat there. I
Mhm.
so I've been an on again, off again meditator for several years now, and I kind of dropped in on this program called Holosync from Centerpoint Research, and what it was is they were hour-long binaural beat sessions where they would create. So I don't know if you're familiar with what binaural beats are, but basically it's you wear stereo headphones and you've got one wave pattern going in one ear and one wave pattern going in another ear. And then what happens supposedly is it reconciles as the difference between the two wavelengths in your brain.
Huh.
So if you've got, 20 hertz in one ear and 15 in the other, it'll be, or megahertz or whatever, it'll be 5 megahertz in like the way it's received in your brain. And so through this, supposedly you can create meditative states through binaural beats. So I did that for a long time. But what I found was it was hard to keep with the program because it was an hour-long commitment, and so I would kind of go on again, off again with it. And I was pretty good about it for a while, but then I came across do you know who Sam Harris is?
Uh-uh.
Okay, so Sam Harris is this public intellectual. He's one of the most well-known atheists on the planet. He has a podcast called Making Sense that is all philosophy and society and politics and things like that. And then he has this app called Waking Up that is all meditation and theory around the nature of consciousness. He actually just licensed the complete lectures of Alan Watts. And so if you get on his app, you can get access to the complete lectures of Alan Watts, plus a bunch of other like guest lecturers and stuff like that. But he's this really fascinating neuroscientist, and he created this app that is just like little 10-minute meditations. And I do it in my car before I go into work. And I find that it helps me to cultivate my attention. It helps me to be able to understand the different appearances in consciousness as they come up. Um, and I find meditation, like if I fall off of doing it for too long, I notice the way, the internal dialogue starts to creep in, and I find myself slipping into depression, slipping into anxiety. which is really easy to do at this moment in our history. You know, interestingly enough, by every objective measure, it has never been better for human beings on Earth. And that's across the board, not just in the Western world, but it's never been better. Even the, developing nations that are struggling have never been in a better shape than they are now. We're lifting, tens of thousands of people out of poverty every day. Maternal death rates are down, infant death rates are down, literacy is up, gross domestic product is up, wealth is up, education is up. Uh, uh, this may be a controversial thing to say, but racial attitudes have never been better. Discrimination has never been lower. The world has never been less violent. And yet, the tone of news and messaging on social media platforms has never been worse. The messaging has never been darker. And if you just look at the news and you just look at social media, it just looks like the world is on fire. When what's really at play is this availability heuristic, this bias that human beings have a tendency towards, where, we have this massive availability of tragedy and awfulness being jammed into our brains all day long. And so it feels like we're all going to die. And if I don't meditate and I don't exercise and I don't put down my phone and spend time with my kid or play music or spend time with my friends, I can go to some pretty dark places.
Mhm. I was gonna say too, exercising has been huge for me. I go to
Yeah,
the gym 6 days a week, and that's been
that's great.
that's
That's
close.
great.
That's close to meditating, to me, really. I
Yeah.
watched what I eat more because I was up to fucking like 470 pounds. I got diabetes. I was fucked, man. So for me, working
Wow.
out really opened up a new fucking door for me, man. I said, that's pretty close to meditating for me. Like just
I mean,
getting
I would
in.
say it's a form of meditation.
Mhm.
That's the thing, is that really all that meditation is, especially if it's like all meditation is across all the different methodologies, is just a way of jamming the signal in your conscious mind and allowing yourself to become aware of the space between thoughts. you know like, I've talked to people that are like, oh, I'm so terrible at meditating. It's like, everybody's terrible at meditating. That's kind of the point, is
Yeah.
you're in this double bind where it's like you're sitting and you're paying attention and you're realizing how much your brain just spits out nonsense, and you're allowing yourself to become aware of. In the Sam Harris meditations, a lot of times what he'll do is he'll just call your attention to the prior condition of consciousness, you know, just basically like everything that is arising on its own, everything you see is just an appearance in consciousness, and it's just sort of a reflection on consciousness as just sort of this just a condition. It's just the space in which everything is happening all the time. And he does this. I can't remember the teacher that he's referencing when he says this. The name escapes me, but there's this book. You might look it up. The book is called On Having No Head, and there's this meditation practice where, in the space of the snap of a finger, you look for the thinker. You look for your own head. And, I think a lot of people experience life as being kind of this homunculus walking around in a body, like just like a little piece of consciousness walking around in a meat computer. You know what I mean? And when you do this exercise of like looking for your own head, of looking for the thinker, you kind of find that you can't necessarily pin down a locus of attention. You know what I mean? It's like he'll do this thing where he goes, are you behind your face? Are you in front of the back of your head? You know, are you above your body in some way? And like takes you to this Socratic process of like kind of going along the boundaries of your own awareness and discovering that your consciousness is not limited to just like your brain inside your skull. It's really a fascinating practice. I can't recommend it enough.
Yeah, I'll check into that, man. Yeah, too. I wonder. I think you'd mentioned something earlier about. I can't remember what exactly you were talking about, but it made me think about, like, I wonder how much like movies and um social media stuff like that is like negatively affected people's minds. I think I imagine like I wonder if people like I feel like a lot of people look at their lives like a movie, or like a reality TV show now that's a hot
Of
thing.
which they are the main protagonists. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that encourages people to act like a certain way. And I wonder, like, back before there was like TV and electronics, all that bullshit, if like how people thought, because I feel like there probably is a lot of people that like are like look at their lives like, you know, a movie or fucking TV because that's what uh they've known to relate their issues to and their mind to. Back in the
Well,
day, it used to be books and you kind of created your own pictures with books and it kind of worked your mind a bit more.
well, what are you familiar with Joseph Campbell? Do you know who Joseph Campbell was?
No.
Joseph Campbell was a professor of comparative mythology, and he wrote this book called The Hero with a Thousand Faces, and he's written a bunch of other books that are of the same topic. And he did a PBS series for a little bit back in the 70s, and he actually was a really big influence on George Lucas and Star Wars. And in The Hero with a Thousand Faces, Joseph Campbell does an exploration of the concept of the monomyth, which is just this idea of you've heard the term the hero's journey. You've heard of that?
Mhm.
Like basically every heroic myth from every culture. And that's the other thing, is these things have popped up in cultures all over the world independently, unaware of each other, but they all kind of have these same themes of like a hero is in his natural world, and then suddenly there's some sort of magical event that's like a call to adventure, and it pulls him out of his natural world and brings him into this new place, and he goes through these trials and goes into the underworld and slays the dragon and da 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 da. And there's this whole process. If you look up the hero's journey, there's this huge thing on it. And Joseph Campbell's book, it's a super cerebral read and kind of tough, but it's definitely worthwhile. But basically what Joseph Campbell asserts is that we as human beings have evolved to narrativize our lives so as to communicate, like one of the best things that we learned how to do as human beings is develop language and communicate stories to one another to basically save the next generation time. It would be really inefficient to have a terrible experience and then not be able to communicate that to the rest of your tribe so that they can, make better decisions or make, better moral moral calculations going forward. And a lot of the religions, we also developed this there's this idea of the God-shaped hole that human beings have in them, which is basically all religions and spiritual practices came from this natural desire to want to encode more morality and ethics and a right way to live.
I
And
got
I
you.
think that I
Hey man,
definitely think,
I got to
go ahead.
interrupt you real quick. So the meeting's about to end. So just hit, if it ends on us, well, maybe we'll just end it now and you can come back from that same link I sent you.
Okay.
Sorry about that. It just runs out of time every once in a while. So
Okay.
I'm sorry to
Cool.
interrupt you, but hold your thought and we'll just come right back to it. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay. There you go.
So, so yeah, so in response to kind of what you were saying, I'm wondering if, so are you suggesting that maybe like the fact that we don't read books anymore might be hindering our imagination and um, hindering our ability to tell coherent stories and things like that? Is that kind of what I
Maybe
was?
not so much that, but like maybe it maybe more the influence of movies and fucking reality TV shows and social media are impairing our judgment to make choices, like proper choices on our own.
I will say that, like, on one hand, I think that movies and television and even social media can play an important role
Oh, 100%.
in in spreading, or do play an important role, actively do play an important role in spreading messages, and they're amazing technologies. And like, there were plenty of people who thought that the printing press and the radio and on and on and on and on were going to be the end of civilization as we know it. You know what I mean? Now that so there are a lot of things to celebrate about those technologies.
Yeah, for
At
sure.
the same time, I don't think we were evolved to take in the rapid fire information that we get. I think that the process of scrolling and seeing, I don't think we were evolved to know what everybody thinks about everything all the time. I used to feel that if I muted or unfollowed people, that I was siloing myself. I used to think that that was the wrong thing to do, and I've changed my intuitions on that, because I don't think that we were evolved to have the whole jungle coming up against us all the time. We were evolved to deal with one lion popping out of a bush once in a while. And I think that the way that we are getting hit with information is biochemically jacking us up, maxing out our adrenals and getting our cortisol all up, and making us paranoid and crazy. And I think right now, kind of I don't know if they're being deliberately wielded with malevolence necessarily, but they are being used irresponsibly. And so I have a rule, and that is that I get my politics and my news from reliable sources. And I very deliberately pick out where I get that information from. And I listen to, heterodox conversation, and I listen to good faith conversation, and I listen to well-educated, deep thinkers working through the biggest problems of our time. What I don't need is, I don't need to hear everyone I know give their 240 character take on every little thing. And so what I have started doing is I curate my feed. I use social media for entertainment and promotion and networking and staying in touch with people, and that's it. And I have a pretty simple rule, which is, if you post something that makes me cringe, I just mute you. That's just how it is. And it may sound, cold in some ways, but I would rather preserve a relationship with the full scope, dynamic, complicated version of a person in reality than with their social media avatar.
Exactly, man. I've actually just done similar too. For a while, I was just deleting people and I realized that wasn't good, but I just mute people and I don't post as much controversial shit as I used to because I just don't want to argue with people. And I just have learned to like ignore controversial shit. But like you said, if I see something that makes me cringe or makes me get that itch to start fucking arguing, I just mute the motherfucker. And like you said, usually I'm with you because like you get more done in person than you do online, and I don't want to.
Well, right.
And people are misunderstood too, man. People think certain ways because of their own personal outlet. I mean, their own personal experiences with life, and
well, and they have their tribal affiliations.
Yeah.
So I mean, that you hear the term virtue signal thrown around a lot. And I think that it's important to differentiate between people who are signaling with positive intention. Like there are those who would say that signaling support for Ukraine when the war started kicking off was a form of virtue signaling. There are people who would say that and they would say that in like a pejorative way. I personally am of the belief that it's like, if you are sincere in what you are signaling, that can be helpful to show solidarity and now that's just my personal belief. I know there are plenty of arguments for and against that. I think there's a type of virtue signaling that is not helpful, which is where people are signaling things that they do not in fact wholeheartedly believe or are unaware that they don't practice and are doing so because it is the company line. Essentially, they're doing it because it's the language of their tribe.
Yeah.
And
that goes two ways too, man. That goes, I mean, not to politicize too many things, but that goes for me I see that on both sides of the spectrum, really, red and blue.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Across the board.
And until we get rid of that mentality, nothing's going to get fixed, and in my opinion, that's kind of what they want. They want us all bickering amongst ourselves,
Well, and this is the thing is, I know like there's a paranoid conspiratorial minded part of me, which does think that it is malevolent and deliberate. But there's another part of me that thinks that it's just, we live in a country of 330 million people. We live in a world of 7 to 8 billion people. It's way too complicated to really govern it all.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And like the bigger the scale of the government, the more cumbersome it is. So like, you think about it like the difference between a kayak and a cruise ship. A municipality is a kayak. It's easy to maneuver. It's easy to make changes pretty quickly. A federal government, like a nation state, is like a cruise ship. It takes forever to turn it around. It takes forever to move things because there's just so much that goes into it. So I'm actually gotten to this point where I'm more apt to give the charitable interpretation that, it's not that there's necessarily some force that wants us bickering. It's that we are these little monkeys, with, I heard this saying that was like, we're dealing with, and I can't remember who to attribute the quote to, but it was basically like we have a primitive nervous system and archaic institutions and godlike technology. It's like we're just these little monkeys. We're not as evolved as we like to think we are.
Oh.
And then we have these outdated institutions that take forever to change anything. And then we have this technology where our grasp has exceeded our reach, you know, and we've created something that we just haven't quite gotten a handle on yet. And I think that a company its whole purpose is to make money for its shareholders. Okay. So the best way you can make money for your shareholders in the social media environment is to keep people on as long as possible. And they want to figure out ways. And there's definitely been some knowingly unethical stuff that has gone down. That's documented and established and unequivocal.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it's individuals that are doing those things. I think it's groups of individuals, collectives, who are basically beholden to shareholders who have to make their businesses profitable. So they have to keep people on as much as possible. And the best way to keep people on is to get them plugged in and pissed off.
Oil companies.
Yeah, I mean, it's like well, speaking of oil companies, like this is, still something that's being debated right now, but it's sort of like, it's not really arguable that nuclear is the most efficient form of energy on the planet right now. It's the most efficient thing out there. And we could do so much more with it than we are doing with oil and gas and coal and all these other types of energy. But people are freaked out about nuclear because, again, of the availability heuristic. There's been movies and books and television shows and news articles about these, just a handful of meltdowns that have happened in the world. And so people are afraid of that. And that's in our culture. So we have to deal with that. And we have to deal with the money interests and on and on and on. And you can go into all the various complicated factors. But I really don't think it's a handful of clandestine, malevolent, wicked, evil people pulling the strings. I think it's just an overly complicated dynamic system that we're not really good at managing yet.
Yeah.
We just kind of haven't gotten there yet.
Well, you mentioned the cruise ship, and the thing about that cruise ship is we change the captains of it every 4 to 8 years, and they both, all those captains want to go completely opposite ways. So you're just kind of fucking going in circles.
Well, the incentives are bad. It's like the incentive is based on election cycles. So it's like you're trying to get you or your party reelected in the next cycle. So you're going to do whatever is going to get people the most plugged in and excited. It's like, I just came back from 3 days at the Heterodox Academy conference, and I sat and I had face-to-face conversations with people from every walk of life, every, political ideology you could think of, and in person, like anytime you went to a meal, you were sitting down with a different group of people and having face-to-face conversations. Anytime you went to a lecture or a workshop, you had different people on either side of you. And it was kind of this environment where you were encouraged to just talk to people. And I talked to Marxists, and I talked to, Christian conservatives, and I talked to libertarians, and I talked to democratic socialists, and I talked to all these different types of people. I talked to, more like integral theory type of minded people. And what I found is that if you have civil conversations, the rules of engagement for open inquiry and constructive disagreement and viewpoint diversity, if you know the rules of engagement and you know how to talk to people, and more importantly, how to listen to people and understand people, you find that we have more in common than we don't. I heard this conversation on a podcast I was listening to recently that was sort of talking about like the integral theory of politics and philosophy and ideology, which is more like taking all these different ideas and forming them into a Venn diagram in your mind. Right now, we've got the abortion issue going on. and it's tearing families and friendships apart. We've got the gun issue going on, that's tearing families and friendships apart, the police issue, the race issue, the climate issue,
You
and,
talk about
and
the
COVID.
abortion
And
issue.
well, I mean, all of them, every issue you can think of. There's all these. It's basically, well, here's my point and here's your point, and my point doesn't agree with your point. It's like, well, what you can do is you can take all the points that are facts, or that they are, at the very least, they're understandable perspectives, and you can kind of overlap those things in a Venn diagram, and you can go, this is true, and this is also true at the same time.
That's what I don't get about a lot of this shit, is because like I can see like the fucking viewpoint on like, it's like there can be multiple right ways, right, and multiple rights, and multiple wrongs. Oh, I don't know what the fuck that was.
I like the idea of distinguishing between discussion, dialectic, and debate. Discussion, like the purpose of discussion is to understand. Let's have a discussion so we can understand one another. The purpose of dialectic is to get at truth. It's like you say something, I say something, and we together are going to try and steel man each other's perspectives and see if we can arrive at some kind of truth. And the purpose of debate is ultimately to win. So I kind of feel like we should stop having debates and focus more on having discussions and dialectic.
Yeah.
Let's get to the bottom of it. Let's go. You tell me what you have to say, and I will do my best to steel man your position, even if it's something that I don't agree with, affirm it, tell you that I understand, find the points of agreement and say, okay, so let me get this straight. You think X, Y, Z. Okay, I think we can both agree with A, B, C. I just have some questions about, and then you start asking questions to push on the thinner points of what they're trying to say. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think through that approach, when you talk to people respectfully, I think people are less likely to become entrenched and become tribal. And at least in my experience, it seems to work miracles.
Well, and
it
part
seems
of
to.
part of the problem
Go
with
ahead.
social media is that you can start out a conversation like that, and because you can't hear somebody's tone of voice or look at somebody's face, you can misinterpret how that's going, and then it becomes a debate, or it becomes a you're right, I'm wrong, and that's why I'm with you on that. There's more, like I said, I have always believed there's not necessarily a right or a wrong. And in a lot of cases, there's a lot of in betweens, I can see,
Right.
I can see a lot of people's points on all kinds of, it's frustrating too when you look at life that way, because it's a lot easier to just pick a side, because then I feel like I'm stuck in the fucking middle, and then I feel like I piss everybody off.
Well, we were talking about when you smoke, and this is kind of to circle back around.
Yeah.
We're talking about how you get in your head on, psychotropic drugs or whatever, on weed or psychedelics or whatever it might be. I've had fights with people in my head all day.
I hear you.
And I'm sitting there going, what a waste of time. And then every time, without fail, when I've talked to that person face to face, it's changed. You know what I mean? Every time I've talked to someone face to face, you get a much deeper, richer, more complex, more dynamic idea of what that person is all about.
Mm-hmm.
When you're arguing with someone online, first of all, you're not arguing with an individual. You're arguing with an individual's idea of themselves in this space.
Yeah.
You're also dealing with a person in a hyper vigilant, hypersensitive mindset, because they know that everybody's watching what they say.
I've had to become aware of both of those facts about myself. And sorry to interrupt you, but like I don't want to lose my thought. But But I've had to become aware of those facts, both myself or like about myself, in order to fucking make an attempt to fix it, and my life has been so much better since I've taken that approach, where I just
Right.
have taken that idea that like, and even I present myself as a different person, at one point in time than, the person that's me on Facebook isn't necessarily the person that was me behind closed doors, and or out in the real world. And I had to come to the realization that that was how I was being and that I needed to stop that and try to present myself more on Facebook, no matter how hard that could be or wherever I'm at, as the person that I really am and how I would talk to a person in real life. And I try to imagine myself like, instead of imagining the worst case scenario when I'm having a heated conversation with somebody, I try to imagine what the conversation would be like if we were in person, and also
Right.
remind that person of that. We'll be talking to each other like that if we were in person. I don't think so.
Right. That's one of the reasons I got rid of Facebook. I really only use it for the band. I have a sock puppet account that runs the band pages. You know, I did start a TikTok for for the sole purpose of chopping up our back catalog of content and making into 1 minute things, and it is becoming an increasingly dominant platform. And I'm putting some of that stuff onto Instagram, but I have been mentally strategizing my exit for a long time because not even necessarily my exit, but really changing my relationship with those platforms simply because I really want to like people, and I really don't want to engage in a space where the meanest 20% online is incentivized to be nasty. And that's, I mean, you look at, I don't know if you've ever seen the Hidden Tribes of America graph, but it's basically like the meanest, most extreme 10% on either wing is controlling the entire conversation online because of the outrage economy. And the rest of us are kind of just in the middle, keeping our mouths shut because most moderate, intelligent people aren't going to participate in binary sloganeering. They're not going, they know that, like, I got into a conversation with a guy on TikTok where he just made the claim that uh, America is the most indoctrinated society in the world. And he had a bunch of points he gave. And when I found myself preparing a rebuttal to what he said, it turned into a 3,000 word essay. I don't know if you're familiar with Brandolini's law, but it's basically this law of rhetoric that says that the amount of effort required to, like, if you make a claim where you just say the earth is flat, fight me. Well, the amount of effort that goes into me disproving that claim is greater than the effort it takes you to make the claim in the first place by orders of magnitude. So it's like these people who are able to say very flippant and cavalier and oversimplified things control the conversation because most moderate, nuanced, kind of integral individuals don't have the time or the energy, or they're frankly kind of scared that they might, get doxxed and lose their job, or they might lose their friends, or, they just, they do the calculus in their brain and they're just like, it isn't worth me to get involved. So it just ends up being extremists yelling at each other. So, yeah. So a big thing that has happened over the last few years, and I think is happening with a lot of people, is I have been changing my relationship with social media. I've been trying to talk to people more. I've been trying to learn to listen better. And I've been trying to learn the rules of engagement for having difficult conversation, because I believe in human beings. I really do. I want my kid to grow up in, a beautiful world, and I want him to grow up with a coherent idea of humanity. I want him to grow up not proud to be an American, but grateful to live in America, you know, grateful to live in his time. It's like, you know, like I put it this way, I'm not proud of any of my immutable characteristics. I'm not proud of the country where I live. I'm not proud of the time that I came up in, but I am grateful for where I live. And I am grateful for the time that I live in. On the flip side of that, you know, the inverse of that is that I'm also not ashamed, because you can take pride in things that are your own accomplishments, and you can have shame and regret for your own trespasses and your own little personal atrocities. And there are enough of those in any individual's life that we really don't have the bandwidth to also feel undeserved pride and undeserved guilt and undeserved shame for things that we have nothing to do with or had nothing to do with. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get it. Yeah. Plus you don't fix things by carrying that shit with you. You know, you gotta
Right.
accept your flaws and your mistakes unless they're real huge, you know, and just move the fuck on, you know, and you learn from shit and you keep going. And if you let that shit eat you up, it's gonna be more detrimental in the long run than it is to just let it go, you know.
Well, hey, dog bite. I've really been enjoying this conversation, and I hate to cut it short, but my kitty is in the bath and he's asking where I'm at.
I got you.
And I got to go in and read stories and
Well,
go
can we
focus.
cover some motherfucking ruckus just real quick for you run in?
Yeah, absolutely. Please.
Let's talk about your new label real quick.
So yeah, unfortunately with the pandemic turned the whole music industry on its head, and Europe is still recovering, and basically our label lost their distribution arrangement with Napalm, and our label rep's entire job at Rodeo Star has basically been booking and canceling shows for the last 2 years. So our record that we've been working on for like 7 years now pretty much got shelved. And, you know, there was a lot of waiting, and we started kind of doing these just single releases on our own. You know, we've been putting out we released a self-produced live album. We basically remixed and remastered a recording from a Chicago show several years ago. We released that back in December. We've been doing a single every 8 weeks since then. And then, we finally talked to our label in Germany, and we just said, hey man, you know, I understand where you guys are at. We've got this opportunity to go with this label that our friend runs, Glory or Death Records, based out of Oceanside, California. And they gave us their blessing and said, by all means, go ahead. It was not a breach of our contract, and we want you guys to keep putting music out. So please go ahead and do that. So we signed on with Glory or Death Records, fantastic label here in the States, again, out of Oceanside, California. They're going to be releasing our collection of singles, the first collection of singles of everything basically we've been putting out since 2017. It's called The Front Lines of Good Times Volume 1. It's also sort of tied in with our comic book and motion comic series by the same name that we've been doing. So we're going to be releasing Front Lines of Good Times Volume 1 and the super deluxe edition of our 10th anniversary, the 10th anniversary of our live album, The Dirty Half Dozen. We're going to be dropping both of those on vinyl next year, which we're super excited about to finally be putting this stuff out. Cool. We got another motion comic that's getting ready to drop here soon. I'm just waiting on the final cut to come in. We've got a new printed comic that's going to be coming out. Like I said, we're going to be dropping singles like crazy for the foreseeable future. We've got 17 songs in the can up at the studio that we're kind of chipping away at, and pretty much we're going to be doing a single every couple months for the next 2 to 3 years. So we got a lot of stuff coming up. We got a new music video that's getting ready to drop. We got a new lyric video that's getting ready to drop. And yeah, just building the TikTok, man. Building the TikTok and our Instagram reels. You know, trying to stay busy. It's hard to keep a band alive, especially when you got families and you got a guy who lives in another state. But even before the pandemic, we deliberately set ourselves up so that we would have work to carry us through difficult years. You know, we saved up, we squirreled away our nuts for the winter. And now, you know, it just so happens that, you know, without knowing how the world was going to go, it turned out to be the right move for us. So we're going to keep pushing that stuff, and we have nothing live planned for a while. No shows, no tours on the books, but, you know, honestly, I don't think touring is really going to be totally back on its feet until probably 2024 or so anyway. So, you know, right now it's a lot of stop and starts, and we're perfectly happy to just kind of focus on doing the work and putting out what we can. And we're really excited about what we're putting out. We're getting a good response on it.
Cool, man. Where can people find this stuff?
Best way to keep up with us is our website, mfruckus.com. We're also on Instagram at mfruckus. And then we're on TikTok at mfruckus, the band. You can also find us on Twitter, YouTube, Patreon. If any of your listeners, viewers are into Patreon, into becoming long-term supporters of bands, we do have a fairly healthy Patreon going, and we tend to give everything to our patrons super early. And also, we're talking about rebooting our podcast. I don't know if that's going to happen.
I love the
or not.
podcast, man. I used to tune in for a while.
Yeah, you know what? I loved doing it, but the truth is 2020, I didn't feel very funny. I didn't like talking on Skype all that much, and I was still kind of working things out in my own head, and it just came down to a matter of time. Again, we talked about that, you know, like, time is a precious resource, and I just found myself in that moment. I would rather hang out with my kid and play my guitar. But I'm getting to this point now where I think maybe I could manage the podcast and kind of, you know, give it another shot in the arm and pick it back up. And we're talking about it. It may get going again. I'm not totally 100% on that, but it may get going again. That people can find back episodes of the podcast on the MF podcast on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, all that stuff. So we got a bunch of stuff out there. You search MF Ruckus, you can find all kinds of stuff about us.
Right on. All right, man. Well, I'll let you go get to being a dad, and thanks for giving me a bit of your time. And it was great.
Let's do it again soon.
Absolutely, man. I think we could talk about more shit for hours again.
We could go on for days, man.
Yeah.
Seriously, we could go on for days.
It's good seeing
you.
I'd
love to do it. Dog Bite, it's been great talking to you, man. Much love to you and yours. And say what's up to Misha for me if you see her around.
I will let you. Yeah, I will let her know.
All right. I'll talk to you soon, brother.
Bye.
Bye.